Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. Our first guest is Liborous Oshoma, a constitutional lawyer and public affairs analyst. With Nigeria set to go to the polls on Saturday, he will be speaking to us on the rules of engagement and the code of conduct of the Nigerian Armed Forces as provided under the Constitution and the Armed Force Act. This comes against the backdrop of the directive given by the President Muhammadu Buhari for electoral violators to be shot on sight, and the response by the Nigerian Army that they will act in accordance with the law. Well, say welcome to the show this morning.
A pleasure.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start by establishing the position of the law on the deployment of armed forces during elections.
Yeah, first and foremost, permit me to extend my condolences to the families who have lost loved ones in Agatu and, Kajore and so many other parts in Nigeria. And then also my prayers to men of our Nigerian army who are busy daily laying down their today for our tomorrow. And now to go to your questions. The Nigerian army, by virtue of the Armed Forces Act, is ordinarily to protect the territorial integrity. You look at it from a three rings arrangement. You have the outer ring and then two inner rings. You have the Nigerian army at the outer ring. That's at your border. They're not ordinarily supposed to participate in election. And then the inner ring, you have the Nigerian police. These are the civil forces. And then you have other security agencies at the inner ring. But because of, even as recent as 2014 also, there was a court decision given by, I think, Federal High Court in Abuja, ordering the federal government not to deploy the military to monitor elections. But because of the antics and the attitude of our politicians, you find out that every turn we deploy the military to participate at the polls. And that's why even if you remember in 2014 in Ekiti, they were asked not to come close to the polls, but to just keep peace generally at checkpoint and, in all other strategic places within the town.
But is it legal, that order to go in and keep peace? Is it actually legal? What is the position of the law?
Because it is about safety. It's about safety of human lives.
No, it's clearly expedient, but is it legal?
No, it's like you said, it's expedient but not legal.
There you go.
And so, but if it's about protection of human lives, then you now begin to talk about, then the illegality would take, the backstage. Because if it's about, if you look at it, if it's about protection of human lives, not within the polling unit, then you now it now becomes a matter of, for or against, as regards the application of the armed forces, whether you truly, can you, in all honesty, say they are involved in electoral processes or that they are involved in carrying out their constitutional responsibility of protecting, lives and properties.
I want to take you back briefly to that point about expediency as opposed to legality.
Yeah.
We cannot jettison the law just because it's expedient.
No. But that's why I say it can be argued for or against, depending on the angle you're looking at it from. Because if you're talking about protection of human lives, I'm talking about electoral processes also. If the army are involved in electoral processes, and then you now begin to say, well, this is not your constitutional responsibility. If they are around to protect lives, you can also argue that it's your responsibility to protect life. Understanding also the antics of our politicians and the way we play politics here. This is not a country where you ordinarily would expect, people to go about their normal duties on election day. Remember, last Friday, INEC vehicle was burned down in Uyo. Also, in a day before then, the, what do you call it? No, before Anambra, you had PDP office in Kano was burned down. Card readers were stolen in. And so, if you, and also we cannot shy away from the fact that our army ordinarily, it's like we are fighting war on all fronts, both internally and externally. And so you have the Nigerian army deployed to even keep peace within our civil environment. If you're talking about legality, that is also is ordinarily not supposed to be their constitutional responsibility. But when you have a Nigerian police that is not properly trained and overwhelmed, you find at every turn we deploy the Nigerian military to also augment, you know, the security operatives or security apparatus provided by the Nigerian police.
Okay, if we may look at one of the reasons given last time around 2014, 2015, despite that court ruling, that case was at the instance of APC then, where the court ruled that soldiers should not be deployed for election. But one of the reasons given then was that because we don't have enough policemen to man every polling booth, to use the same policemen to man roadblocks to ensure that there is no movement would be like shortchanging ourselves.
Yes.
So the soldiers were used to man the roadblocks to enforce the no movement declared for on election day. So will you now say that in itself is expedient also?
Definitely. You see, in all of this, Nigeria is a very funny country, and maybe as time goes on, I will explain further. There's what I call the hypocrisy of leadership here. You find situations where leaders complain about lack of something, and then they get into office. Rather than take steps to ensure that there's abundance of that that they had complained of when they were in opposition, they close their eyes to it. I would ask, what had been the step that the current government had taken so far to ensure that the Nigerian police that they so complained of, that, oh, the previous government has said, like, we don't have enough policemen to provide security during election. So what have we done between 2015 and 2019 to ensure that we have enough policemen, or that to ensure that we introduce innovative ideas to reduce insecurity during electoral processes? None. And so we are back to where we were before in 2015, to deploy military to keep peace within the society, to ensure that you have roadblocks to also curtail movement. On the day of election, you probably see them close to you here, and then you have them all in strategic places, you know, during election. Apart from that, like I said before, you also have the military operation, Mensa operation here, all over the federation.
Python dance.
Exactly. Or apart from even the Python dance, you have them normally patrolling. This is ordinarily not supposed to be the job of the Nigerian military. You have them patrolling within, you know, towns. That's not supposed to be their job. But you find that the situation we find ourselves will warrant us augmenting with what we have. Because otherwise, if you say, okay, look, in some cases, we've been so used to our policing that it's even difficult in some cases for the police to even arrest situations of insecurity.
So we have established that the Nigerian elections over the years have been militarized.
Yes.
And there's hypocrisy
And
in
we are
leadership.
still militarizing.
So why is this different? Why is this generating so much controversy? Is it because the army chief of army staff has now said that they will obey to the letter, or is it the exact words of the president? What exactly is making this so different?
Both. I listened to your chit-chat just you know, a while ago. Before now, a soldier if a soldier is found obeying lawful order, he can use obedience of lawful order as a defense to any crime that he's charged for. But for the past 10 years now, the Supreme Court had ruled consistently that if unlawful orders are given and you obey those unlawful orders, you go in for it. Because every reasonable man ought to know that these orders are unlawful. Even in civil cases also, in the case of Bello and AG Kwara State also, and Ibikunle and then the state, the Supreme Court had ruled consistently that in carrying out your lawful order as spelled out under Section 33, subsection 2, paragraph B of the 1999 Constitution, you also need to exercise restraint. To also understand that, look, you do not have right to obey unlawful order, all right, have a right to summarily take life. And so, but I had expected, but why I talked about hypocrisy of leadership is, if you remember, in 2014, when former Commissioner of Rivers State, Umbu, who later became AIG Zone 2, gave the same orders to the police, if you go out there in protection of electoral ballot and thugs shoot at you, fire back. The APC that he's busy endorsing this call today shout the loudest. They condemned that statement, called for the summary retirement of Mbu. And the PDP that are today criticizing that order, we are endorsing it, that yes, it is the right thing to do. They copiously cited Section 33, subsection 2, but the roles are reversed today. And so you find the APC, on the other hand, now endorsing it because it's 2019 is coming from the commander-in-chief, and then you have the PDP who once endorsed that same practice and now saying no. But in all of this, we need to look at the position of the law, citing also case laws that I have mentioned. And you find that there is no one situation fit all. It depends. Even Section 33 that everybody is citing, even justification, there is no one situation fit all. You must be able to determine the circumstances at that time to know the amount of force to be used. You don't just say, okay, a man walks casually into a polling unit and attempt to snatch ballot box, and you know you can overwhelm him. And you know even without using baton, you can, stop him. And then you decide to fire at him because the commander-in-chief said so.
A man who's come to snatch ballot box is not going to catwalk into the...
I am just giving you examples. It can happen. And in the same vein, a man can come to snatch ballot box with guns, and it becomes impracticable for you to stop him with bare hands. Or when you tell him to stop, he refuses. And for you to arrest him, you have to use firearms. And so you look at, depending on the situation, Section 33, it's not a straitjacket section. And then also Bello and AG Oyo State and Ibikule and the state also had clearly explained in Bello and AG Oyo State, a man who was condemned to death and his death sentence confirmed by the Court of Appeal. He went on appeal to the Supreme Court. While the appeal was pending, he was executed. The Supreme Court heard that that was a extrajudicial killing because his appeal was still pending in court and awarded damages against the state. In Bikule and the state, Justice Onogen ruled that a situation where the policeman came to arrest a suspect and he was held up somewhere, and the man refused them from having access into the house. They shot him. And the court said that was a extrajudicial killing. That in spite of, because the section relied on by the defense was Section 33, subsection 2, paragraph B. And the court said, no, that cannot avail you because you can't be the prosecutor, the judge, and the executioner at the same time. So I have listened to argument for and against, depending on the convenience. You see parties hold tenaciously to one end. Oh, yes, the president can't do this, or the president... but for me, if I were the president, there are better ways of saying these things that you wouldn't really have to... generate controversies. Yeah. Because as a president, your statement have to be continental, and then also you have to see yourself as the president of the entire country and carry everybody along. You can use statements like the full wrath of the law will come down on anybody found violating any of the provisions of the Electoral Act. And then also, secondly, what have we done to ensure, if death penalties these days don't deter people from committing crimes, what have we done to ensure that we take our electoral practices a notch further so that we will... When Jega came, Jega didn't say, oh, yes, because ballot box snatching was so rampant during Morris's time, and so now we're going to kill anybody caught snatching ballot box. No. He looked at the entire process and said, how do we ensure that we limit the menace of ballot box snatching? He introduced technology. That's what Word Over do. You introduce technology to ensure that you limit the menace of electoral fraud and malpractices. But between 2015 and now, how have we added to promoting and projecting transparency in our electoral practices?
So two things. How we've added or not, is that not the responsibility of the National Assembly? Because the Constitution provides that they are the ones who can pass laws regulating the president's deployment of the armed forces. Has the National Assembly been remiss in their duties in this regard, seeing that this is a recurring scenario each electoral session or season. That's firstly. Secondly, I want to take you back a little bit to the question of soldiers obeying unlawful orders. Does Nigeria follow the Nuremberg principle, whereby soldiers can be arrested, prosecuted, sentenced in a court of law, or would they be court-martialed in accordance to their own laws?
If I will answer your question directly, first and foremost, what they are done, what happens is they are court-martialed and then handed over to civil authority for prosecution. But you find out that because of the practice, it's always very convenient for us to want to defend our own. You find cases, take the custom officer who shot an innocent traveler on Benin Highway. One would have expected that the custom would conduct a thorough investigation before issuing a press statement. But they just went to town trying to exonerate one of their own. A police commissioner once told us that, look, if as a lawyer, forget the fact that you are wearing wig and gown. If a policeman with a rifle tells you to jump into the gutter, do it. Just find a way of getting his name. You can write a petition later. Because if he kills you, we're going to defend him. We're going to say that he's, he was an accidental discharge. If you remember the case of Ugozi against the state, where the argument of the police and the defense was that, you know, there was a scuffle between the deceased and Ugozi. And the Supreme Court, through the ballistic expert, thank God that those people had money to even hire a ballistic expert to examine the body. The ballistic expert said from what he examined, that the bullet was fired at a range and not a scuffle. And so that man was condemned to death. But here, the practice is that you first and foremost court-martial and then hand over to civil authority. But how many have been court-martial and handed over? Even the ones that have been handed over, how many do we even see prosecution up to the end? You know, so these are all of the challenges. That is why people are saying that you don't make blanket statements such as that, because also you have to put into perspective the mentality and the attitude of our security agencies. Once, like Fela said, it is go and kill, go and die. You know, zombie style of mentality. Once you hear good, coming back, it's an impossibility.
But several of the APCs have said that if this would actually, so as some people always say, that the end justifies the means, if this actually brings about a little bit of sanity and decorum in the electoral process, that maybe it might be ultimately justified, that maybe this can, like you said, this can actually serve as a major deterrent to those who will be thinking about it. Is there any line of reasoning that would actually justify this ultimately?
No, we had opportunity. We had ample opportunity, ample time to ensure that we curtail, you know, some of these practices. But because all of them are beneficiaries of the practice, and so they fold their hands, it's not PDP is crying today, not because they feel APC also are not involved in ballot box snatching. No, but because they know that, look, you said something while doing your chit-chat. You know, the attitude of this government is to look the other way when it involves members who are sympathetic to their cause. And then when it comes to others, yes, the law must take its course. And that's why you see PDP arguing and you know, but otherwise, I had said it, death penalty, that is why in other crimes they are outlawing death penalty. Death penalties have been seen not to deter people from committing crime. What you do, you find technological way to ensure that these crimes are not even committed at all. Because with what you have here, yeah, people will still attempt to do it. And then with the outcry and the divide that you have, some people saying for the INEC chairman say, no, you can't do that. It must be according to the provisions of the law. The military say, look, don't instigate us. We obey the instructions of... Why the military spokesperson said something different, the chief of army staff is saying something entirely different. And so, when you look at all of this, you tell yourself the best thing to do is let's have a situation where the laws would minimize the process or any outer of anybody trying to...
At this point in time...
At this point in time...
That cannot happen.
At this point in time, the only way you can, the law regulates society. The only way you can... The process of bringing a culprit to book is as good as the offense itself. That's why the law does not close its eyes to processes. Would you want to in the protection of ballot boxes, incur damages against the states? Because the man is, God heaven bless you as a state if the person, the disease, you know, has a family that is ready to see to the end of the matter. What transpires in court is not what's ordinarily what you think will be is and was. And so that's why would have been better for a government to say, look, why we will not hesitate to use maximum force if need be, but we will ensure that the law takes its course. All these offenses are copiously provided for. The penalties for these offenses are copiously provided for. And then ensure that what happens, you hear that army or the navy or the police arrests, you know, hoodlums or thugs during election who are involved in electoral malpractices. And after the election, what becomes of them? We need to also begin to use some of these persons as example. Prosecute cases to the end, and so that we will have, you know, precedent to say, yes, some people who attempted to snatch ballot boxes, some who were involved in armed robbery, were sentenced to death or were sentenced to life imprisonment. That alone would be enough for you to solve this problem. But because also, when you say, oh, once you attempt, you pay dearly with your life, it is not in all cases. While I agree that there are some situations that will warrant you paying with your life, depending on the circumstance. Also, I painted a picture for you. If, for example, a man comes to snatch ballot box with thugs and guns, and then it is practically impossible for the military personnel to rescue that ballot box, or to protect the people around, and they know that, look, it will be impossible, you know, for that man to walk away without harming or injuring anybody. They can use their firearm. The provisions of the Armed Forces Act is derived from that Section 33, the caveat to Section 33 of the Constitution. But it is not in all cases. If you know, ask any trained military personnel, he will tell you, as a military man holding a gun, he knows, even if you are not trained, even if you are carrying a gun, you are not trained, he knows how to disarm you. That's why they are trained for these things. And so there are situations also when you know well that you can disarm this man, irrespective of the fact that he's carrying a gun. The law also expects you to first and foremost use every means possible to disarm him before you resort to, you know, the firearm. If you go to any police station, the 10 rules of carrying firearms are all spelled out there. The number 10 is when you use it, you must comply with 1 to 9, just like the Court of Appeal in Ibadan did say that section, for you to invoke subsection 10 of section 188, you must comply with section 1 to 9. In the same vein, the police rules on use of firearms, you have 1 to 9. You must have ensured that, you know, you comply with 1 to 9 before you, if it's impossible for you to disarm that person or protect the people around, then you can resort to firearm. So, but when you now have the instruction of the CNC saying that, look, if you try this, we'll use firearm, or that, we know the mentality of our security personnel here.
What does this say about the independence of INEC? Because we do know that the commission should be the one to request deployment of security for the election. What does this action by the president say about the independence of this commission?
Well, we'll agree that INEC independence exists only in their name, but it is not their duty to request deployment of security personnel. Does the law not say INEC shall be responsible for the request of deployment of relevant security for the election? It is the primary responsibility of the CNC and the governor of the state for the protection of lives and property in the states. And so if he feels that to deploy policemen will protect lives, even if INEC does not request for it. But be that as it may, there are cases where also INEC will tell you that we won't deploy materials if there are no security personnel, because they know the danger involved in doing that. But then, talking about the independence of INEC, one would have expected also, the INEC chairman on Saturday did say something very germane, but a lot of us, you know, just missed that point. He said after the postponement of the election in 2015, that it became necessary to discuss around the issues. But the question is, from 2015, when he assumed office, to now, at what point did he raise those issues for all stakeholders to discuss, so that we will further strengthen the independence of the institution. An attempt at even introducing card readers or even giving the National Assembly, to your question now, the power to make laws reordering the election, Section 25 of the Electoral Act. We played politics with it. At the end of the day, it became political, and some senators even said that it was targeted at the president. And that killed that beautiful amendment. And here we are. How do you now expect a National Assembly to make laws for the good, of the society if every law will view it from the prism of, oh, will it affect the president or will it affect the governor?
Okay, if I may just take you to two issues. First, you mentioned that the president perhaps should have couched his language in a more statesmanly. There were attempts by some party leaders to polish what the president said in a fine light.
Yeah, by
yes, but the presidency came out with a statement reaffirming what the president said. An indication either of the military mentality of the president or his state of mind. That is just by way of mind. You have to say something on that. But with the benefit of hindsight, the failure to sign the Electoral Amendment Act, wouldn't you say is having a lot of impact on some of the things we are seeing playing out?
Yeah, definitely. To start from your first question, you see, the attempt by Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the leader in APC, to explain that statement means that something was inherently wrong with the statement. And that's why it needed explanation, because when the words of a statute are clear and unambiguous, the literary rule applies. And so, when a statement is subject to different interpretation, that means there's ambiguity in it. And so that's why you saw the leader trying to explain that, no, this is not what he meant. This is what he meant, because he knows inherently that statement, ought not to have been coming from that quarter. But for reasons best known to the presidency and his handler, if I look, we are not mindful where this is the way he said it and the justification for it. That brings us back to, like you said, it gives the impression that, look, this is not democracy, it's military, and my words should be law. And that's on one side. And then secondly, on your second question. Yes,
the electoral failure to sign the Electoral Amendment Act.
Because we are beginning to see it now that if you remember in Ekiti, in the election in Ekiti and in Oshun, the INEC chairman did say that they were not going to resort to manual accreditation, to incidence form. I had cause to ask Osaze, the INEC Director on Voter Education, what happens to when you have card readers failure? Initially, they had said they were going to deploy, other card readers. But with what had happened now, it is obvious that, it will be difficult to deploy those card readers. And so we'll find ourselves resorting back to manual accreditation in places where, the card readers fail to capture your biometrics. And then they had said that once they look at the register and compare it with the INEC card, and they can verify. Why was there need to introduce the card reader if we still had to be resorting to manual verification? And so you find out that some of this, that's why there's so much cry now on, oh yes, these people are planning to rig. And INEC also at that time had, mooted a novel and beautiful idea when they said they were going to do simultaneous accreditation and voting. Also, they did say that as accreditation was taking place, that the data from the card reader would be immediately transmitted to their collation center. And so it becomes easy. And so that also would have reduced minimally the idea of ballot box snatching. But as we speak now, nobody is even discussing that at all. And so all of these are beautiful and novel ideas that would have aided, the transparency of our electoral process. But because we played politics with the amendment to the Electoral Act, I would have expected that all stakeholders, PDP, the fringe political parties, APC, and the National Assembly come together and agree on all of these ideas and find a way of passing the amendment even before the crisis. But as we speak now, because also we always wait to do the good thing last. In 2003 election, we had the Electoral Act Amendment 2002. For 2007, we had the Electoral Act Amendment 2006. 2011, we had Electoral Amendment 2010. The 2015 election, it didn't see the amendment didn't see the light of the day because of the politics that was introduced into it. The same thing with the 2019 election. We also played politics with it, and all of those beautiful and innovative ideas that would have taken the process a touch further are all abandoned and thrown into the lagoon.
Now, just very quickly, I want to ask you what we can hope for in light of what you just said about all the amendments, including the missing link in the chain. What can we hope for 2013? Because you also pointed out the hypocrisy of leadership. You are aware of the suits, Buhari and Obasanjo and others. Buhari then, as a presidential candidate, sued President Obasanjo, Vice President Atiku Abubakar, as they then were, and 260-odd other people, INEC, state recs, everybody in INEC, basically, over, including, amongst other things, this issue of deployment of armed forces. And now that the boot is on the other foot, the same Atiku Abubakar has been asked to apologize by the Chief of Army Staff. He's been rebuked by the Chief of Army Staff. So what do we do at this point? Really, because the order has gone out, like you said, it's like shutting the barn door after the horse has bolted. The order has gone out. The military are sort of weaponized at this point. What happens next?
What I should say at this time, you know, I'll leave the law aside, like what I told a friend yesterday who came from London. And I said, look, please, I don't know how long you're staying, but for the time being that you're here, this is not London. In London, you can tell a policeman, I know my rights. Here, our rights are in the pocket of our police people. So if they tell you jump, jump. Just obey to the last instructions. As we go to the election, some people, some of our zealous men of, you know, in uniform would want to show to the government that, you know, they are working. In the same vein, you know, these people are human beings. They also have their political leanings, irrespective of how you want to look at it. And so, as we go out there, some military men will want to be overzealous. And then, especially the statement credited to the Chief of Army Staff, for me, I think also shouldn't be coming from the Chief of Army Staff. Because it's not the Chief. Yes, the President is the Commander-in-Chief the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. But he also should remember that the Nigerian Armed Forces, or the Nigerian Army, is the Nigerian Army for all of us. And not just, his allegiance should not just be to the president. And like you said, it is don't obey unlawful orders. Even the American government, the EU, had also reiterated that the Nigerian Army and INEC should not obey unlawful orders from anybody. And so if you now say you will obey every order, so if the president says, go kill this man, you would carry out such order? That's the implication. You know, that's the meaning of such statement to a reasonable man. And so that's why we all need to be very careful. Most especially now that no matter what happens here, you have people who will be for and against. And so don't go die, you know, for nothing, all in an attempt to wanting to exercise your franchise. Let's conduct and comport ourselves in a civil manner so you don't give room to trigger-happy, you know, people to want to latch on to an order that they really did not understand to cause mayhem.
I want to say many thanks, talking about Liborous Oshoma, for actually obliging us this morning and helping us grasp all that has been causing a lot of controversy.
My pleasure on this.
All right, the constitutional lawyer and the public affairs analyst, and it's now time for a short break here on the morning show. When we come back, we will have another public affairs analyst, Dr. Abiodun Adeniyi, to discuss the likely scenarios for this Saturday's presidential elections. Stay with us.